everyone, it's Christina Garzon back with another amazing episode of GTV on gastronomy. Today I'm in the kitchen with culinary cannabis crusader Angie Willoughby at the Green Baker on Instagram. Angie, can you tell me how you got started in the cannabis field?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show first. And so I got started, the Green Baker started in 2018. And it kind of just started as like me being able to support my family, kind of like have some extra income. And as I began to like research and learn more about this plan, I realized the amazing benefits of it. And so I started medicating my son, and I started to realize that more people kind of needed it. And everyone loves food. Everything is, nutrition is power. Knowledge of nutrition is power. And so it became an advocacy and education company. And so that's what I've been doing so far with the Green Baker. So please follow me. You'll learn all about what I'm doing.
Awesome. And might I say, I'm so stoked to have you in the kitchen because I'm really, really hungry.
I am too. I'm like...
Yeah. So what are you planning on whipping up for us today?
Oh my gosh, it's gonna be so amazing. We're in summer, we're in South Florida, it's hot as all get out, right?
Yeah.
So I love cooking seasonally. So right now what's in season are mangoes, so that's seasonal. So I'll be doing a mango salsa with seared salmon and like a slight arugula salad with a light vinaigrette dressing on it. We've all been quarantined, so we're all getting real fat, so we're gonna do something that's really light, really easy, and hopefully will help to cut some of those quarantine calories we've had on our bodies. So do you want me to start, or do you want any more info about what we're doing? So I have a nice mango here, but mangoes are kind of tricky, right? So I'm gonna show you guys a little bit of how to cut, because sometimes people see mangoes and they get kind of intimidated. They're like, oh man, how do I do this, right? And so the easiest thing when you have a fresh mango is just to cut the two sides. And so that'll give you kind of these two halves. And then you just want to really gently like score it. And no avocado hands, right? Okay, so we're gonna make sure that we're staying, not cutting through the skin, but we're just kind of like scoring it, kind of like that. And then we're just gonna pop these out here. And we have beautiful diced mango, and then you just take your knife and kind of like shave it into the bowl. And this is an easy way to kind of get your mangoes in, right? But not all of us have that kind of patience or time or want to do that. And so a really, really fun thing is you can get the mangoes that are already like cut off the skin and everything. So that's what I'm gonna use today. I wanted to show you guys how to do like an actual mango, but this is super easy to do because it already comes ready. So I'm just gonna take this mango and kind of dice it up a little bit. And you wanna get a mango that's like kind of on the greener side, you don't want it to be like too ripe, because if it's too soft, then it's gonna kind of break apart. So I'm gonna dice this up. And in this recipe, we're gonna be using some lime, some fresh lime juice, some cilantro, some jalapeno for a little bit of heat. And obviously, of course, if you guys don't like heat, you can always, not do the jalapeno. And then also I'll be using some of my Green Baker infused oils. So I love to put oil in salsa. It kind of helps to like bring all the flavors together, I feel like. So I'll be doing that in this salsa. And and then I'll be searing off some beautiful salmon to go with that. So we have, I'd say, about a half a cup of mango. And I have some peppers already diced, red bell pepper, some red onion, and the jalapeno that I talked about in here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a lime, and key trick, you wanna roll your citrus on your cutting board, because that helps to release the juice and it makes it easier to juice it. Sometimes you get those really tough limes and you're like, damn, all I'm getting is skin, no juice. Well, if you roll it slightly, it'll help to kind of juice it a little bit. So we're gonna throw a little bit of that lime in there too. Now, you can use as much or as little as you want. It just, depends on what your preference is and what you like. I kind of really like it really limey. So I'm gonna probably use 2 of the limes here. So I'm gonna roll it on my cutting board, get that juice release. And I'm gonna do another lime half here. Okay, so your lime juice is really what's gonna give you a nice kind of flavor, right? So we wanna make sure we have enough of it to be able to give you a nice juicy kind of salsa, because don't nobody like dry salsa. It's not good. So with the rest of the mango, I'm gonna do a little bit more mango because I kind of really like it really fruity and really mango-y with that lime. So I'm gonna just cut up a couple more pieces here. And then the last thing I'm gonna add is my cilantro. And then I'm gonna want that to just sit and kind of like just do its thing, because nobody wants to mess with Mother Nature, right? So I'm gonna put the mango in, I have the lime and all of that in here, and then obviously, muy importante, we have to season, right? So I'm gonna season with a little bit of black pepper and a little bit of pink salt. I love pink salt because it has a little bit less sodium and it gives you a cleaner flavor, and but still with that nice saltiness, okay? And I'm gonna use my green baker oil. I'm gonna put a little bit in there just to help it all kind of come together. So that's about a tablespoon or so. Now, when it comes to dosing, you wanna be really, really careful. If anybody's had a really bad edible trip, then you know. You wanna be really, really careful with how much you're dosing, okay? I have my salmon here, so I'm gonna bring that out so it can start to kind of get ready. And my cilantro, which I had, but now I don't know where it is.
Okay, don't worry.
Okay, here it is. And we're gonna just chop up this cilantro. Okay, and we're just gonna take about a bunch. Honestly, salsa is one of those things that don't nobody need no measurements. Ain't nobody got time for that. You're trying to be poolside with a drink in your hand. You ain't trying to figure out like, oh, a third of a cup, a quarter of a cup, a teaspoon, whatever. So it's just really about how you feel about it, what you like. And you can do this with basil. You can do this with any other herb. You don't have to use cilantro. I know some people really don't like the taste of cilantro. So if you don't like cilantro, then that's totally okay. So I'm just gonna dump that in there, give this a nice little stir. And you can see it looks really fresh, really vibrant, super easy, okay? And so we're gonna let that sit and kind of marinate with the lime juice and the oil, okay? And I'm gonna set that to the side, okay? So we're gonna get started on the fish, because the fish is gonna take a little bit. We're gonna sear it first, and I totally realized I totally dropped the ball on the dosing thing. So when it comes to dosing, especially with edibles, you wanna start low and slow. That's super important. I can't stress that enough, because once you're over the edge, it's kind of difficult to bring you back from the edge. So you wanna make sure that you're starting, right now that's about a 30 milligram for this whole salsa. So depending on how many servings you have, you would kind of divide that, and that would give you kind of like a kind of per person, per serving kind of dose. And when in doubt, you know, take a little bit less. You can always take more if you're not feeling it, or if you're like, oh, I'm not, you know, feeling it the way I want to feel it, you can always take some more. All right, so I have my salmon here, and I'm just gonna season this with some salt, some pink salt. And I'm gonna turn I have a nice cast iron pan. It's kind of preheating. Cast iron takes a little bit of time, so you always wanna give it like a few extra minutes on the stove, okay? And I turned the heat up on that, so it's gonna get nice and hot. That's what I want, because I want a nice hard sear on the outside of that salmon before we put it into the oven, okay? I'm gonna do some black pepper. Now, I skinned these myself. I got with the skin on because I kind of think they taste better. And so I have some extra scraps and stuff like that. That's always wonderful to have, because you want to definitely, you can make salmon salads out of it. You can poach it. So don't throw away your trims. Don't throw away your fat, because that stuff is good. Obviously skin, probably not the best, but definitely everything else is really, really good. So you want to make sure you're keeping those trims when you are doing your salmon, if you cut it yourself. Okay, I'm just gonna do just a little bit of lemon over the top. Not a lot, because I don't want the salmon to steam, but I do want to give it a little bit of that pop of that citrus, okay, from the lemon. So we have our pan. I'm gonna turn that up just a little bit more. While I'm waiting for that to go, on this side here, we have a cobbler that we're doing, a triple berry cobbler. And in this, I'm gonna do a triple berry infused cobbler. Once again, it is summertime. Berries are in season. That's really what you want. You want things that are gonna be in season. So I'm gonna be using a mixture of raspberries, blueberries, and strawberries, and blackberries for this cobbler. And it's super easy. I'm gonna show you guys how to make a hot water short crust. It's really, really easy. It sounds super complicated, and you've probably seen it on the Great British Baking Show, but it is actually really freaking easy to do, okay? So I'm gonna move all my stuff over here, so that way you guys can see a little bit better. And it really doesn't have a lot of ingredients in it, so it's super, super easy. I actually have some pre-made, but when you make it, it always seems to be like so much. So you just put it in the fridge. I wrapped it with some plastic wrap, and then I have enough to take out whenever I wanna like throw something on top of a cobbler or you know, some fruit or whatever, put it in the oven, and you have an instant dessert, and you look like a boss, and it didn't even take you any time. All right, so we have a nice hot sear on this pan here, so we're gonna get started with the salmon. So we're always gonna start with the presentation side first, so, because that's gonna be your first, that's gonna be your first thing that people are gonna see. So once again, this pan is really nice and hot. And I have all these little baby ends here that I'm gonna just throw in there and cook, because we can always make a really nice salmon salad out of that later on. And you don't wanna crowd it too much, because the more salmon you put in there, then it's gonna start to steam. So you kinda wanna make sure that you have some good ventilation around your pieces, that they're not all like kinda bunched on top of each other. Okay, now we're gonna leave that alone. Key thing when you're searing stuff, leave it alone, let it do its thing. It's gonna be amazing, it's gonna be awesome. So I'm gonna let that sear for maybe about 2 minutes or so, and then I'm gonna put that into an oven for 375 degrees for about 8 to 10 minutes, depending on how thick your salmon is. It can vary, or how well you like your salmon. I like mine on a little bit on the underside. Okay, this is looking really, really good. And it's smelling amazing. Okay, so I am going to put this into the oven so that can finish cooking while I work on my other stuff. Okay, let me clean. Now I like using cast iron because it can go like straight into the oven. I don't even have to transfer it. If you don't have the cast iron, that's totally fine. You can use a regular pan, just transfer it into another, like a sheet pan or like a glass pan or something, and then that'll go into the oven with your stuff. So, but I like the cast iron. It makes it like all in one, and it's super easy, okay? Okay, so I'm gonna turn this off, and then we're gonna move over to our cobbler, because that's gonna take the next longest. The salad is like super easy, like 2 seconds, okay? So we're gonna work on the cobbler, okay? So like I said, I have this wonderful piece of hot water short crust dough that I made. So I have some of that. So what we're gonna do is I have a bowl in the freezer. I am actually using frozen berries because they're available year round. Obviously, of course, it is season now, so fresh berries absolutely can be used in this. It doesn't have to be frozen, but it just makes it kind of convenient. Also, another little tip, if you have fruits or any sort of like fruit that's kind of going bad and you're like, crap, I don't want to like throw this out because I hate this, throw it in a Ziploc, throw it in the freezer, then you have berries year round or whenever you want. So, so I'm just gonna take this bowl, dump, it's gonna be about 3.5 cups of my berries in here. okay? And we're gonna do a third of a cup of the can of sugar. Now, yes, I did say with the salmon, don't worry about measuring, but when it comes to baking, you kind of want to measure everything. Even if it's not like 100% measured, but you want to at least know what it is that you're putting in, because that will make or break what you're doing. So we're gonna do a third of a cup of the can of sugar. Okay. We're gonna do cornstarch. So the cornstarch is what's gonna thicken up all that juice from the berries, okay? So cornstarch is pretty much what's gonna make it into that nice, like, kind of like gooey texture. So we're gonna do about a tablespoon of that. Now, my favorite thing to put into this is fresh orange. So I'm gonna take an orange, just gonna zest it with my zester here, a little bit of the peel. So I think that gives it a nice extra like fresh, summery vibe. And then I'm actually gonna take my orange and then put some of that juice in there too. Now the berries are gonna give up a lot of moisture, but the orange juice kind of helps to give it a nice pop with the oranginess of it. Okay, so we have an orange. And then we're gonna do a little bit of vanilla extract. Okay, just a touch of the vanilla. And then we're just gonna stir that up, and I'm gonna stir that up, make sure it gets all coated up. And it's kind of created like a nice little thick kind of like syrup. You wanna make sure there's no like dry pockets from the cornstarch. Okay, and we're gonna take this and we're gonna put this into our tins. Now I have individual tins. You can do this in a, you know, pan, or, you know, if you wanna put it into a beautiful tart pan, whatever the case is, you can do that. I like to do it individually because it also, once again, helps with dosing. So depending on the number of milligrams in your sugar, because that's your dose, that's where your dosing is coming from, then you can properly say, okay, well, I know that in this whole thing, I'm getting 100 milligrams. I got 4 pans out of it. That's 25 milligrams in each one. So being able to put it individually instead of like in a big pan by itself, where you pretty much can't really dictate how many milligrams is gonna be in it, is a little bit difficult. So I like to do it in these little individual ones. And then like whenever I want like a little extra snacky snack, then I can kind of have my little infused cobbler. And the dosing is very precise, so it helps out a lot. Okay, we don't want to fill the tins too much, because you need to have some space for your dough to go into also. So you kind of want to keep it to where there's some space in there. And mind you, it'll boil down a little bit too as it cooks, but at least keeping it to where you can kind of get your dough in there, that's important. Okay, so we have that, and we want all that juice that's in there, because that juice is what's gonna give it our nice like gooey texture. Okay, so I'm gonna actually wash this. And so while that's happening, I'm gonna check on our salmon and see how that's doing. And then in this same pan, I'm just gonna make the hot water crust. Okay. I'm gonna put that down, and I'm gonna check the salmon. Oh, that looks really good. I'm gonna give it a look-see, see kind of where we're at. Yeah, that looks beautiful. So I'm gonna flip these over and then just let them kind of sit and finish. Okay, so my salmon is ready. Right, so I'm gonna push this to the back. Okay, all right, so to get started with our hot water shortbread, I have some hot water that's boiling because that's gonna go into it, hence the word hot water shortbread. So I have some, take these away since we do. So we have 4 little tartlets that we're gonna do. So for the short water crust, we're gonna use a 1.5 cups of flour. And I already have this portioned out, so I'm just gonna dump that right in there. Ho, 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 okay, like so. I'm going to use, again, another 1/3 cup of my can of sugar. Now this is definitely gonna give you way more portions, so you're gonna have to be a little bit more mindful with your crust. And you can also do this with regular sugar also. You don't have to use the infused sugar. You can just do it with regular white sugar. If you like, okay, I'm good with just the infused sugar in the fruit, I don't wanna use infused sugar in the top, you can definitely do that, okay? We're gonna do 1/3 cup of brown sugar also, because brown sugar is gonna give us some nice color. So I'm gonna do 1/3 cup of that. Okay, I'm gonna pack that down. And you're gonna see how quickly this all comes together. Like literally, you can be like having a drink while this is going on, okay? So we have brown sugar. We have baking soda, or baking powder, I'm sorry. So we're gonna do 1.5 tablespoons. And we also need salt, so that's important. So we're gonna do a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now here's the fun part. Now that you have all of your dry ingredients in here and you have everything ready to go, you're gonna take your infused butter. Now you want your butter to not be really, really hard, and you don't want it to be too soft, because that's what's gonna give the nice kind of texture to your crust. So I just have it, it's not cold, but it is kind of in a liquidy form. So we're just gonna do about 1/2 cup right into the flour. My suggestion is to get a couple gloves, and you could do this with a fork, you could do this with a pastry fork, whatever. I feel like we have hands, they're the best instruments ever. So I'm gonna grab a couple gloves, and I'm gonna just knead this butter into my flour. And I just wanted to get it till everything is kind of moist and it looks kind of like wet sand, kind of, because that's gonna be the perfect texture. And if you have some lumps in there or whatever, it's totally fine, it's not gonna break it. So I'm just gonna throw this in here. And then I'm gonna knead this with my hands. And I'm kind of a freak, I like to use gloves. You can do this without gloves, but it's the chef in me, I can't help it. So if you can see it, it kind of looks like wet sand texture. It kind of comes together, but it definitely is a crumble and it kind of falls apart. So you definitely want that kind of texture. You want to make sure all of your flour is incorporated. It's all been touched by the butter. So we have that. So we have this wonderful crumbly texture. Okay, that's what we want. That's key. Okay. Now, I'm gonna take off my gloves now that I'm done fondling my dough, and I'm going to add in 1/3 cup of the hot water that we have on the stove, okay? And you're gonna be like, this is freaking crazy, what is she doing? I know, believe me, it looks crazy to me too, but it makes the crust awesome, really does. So you're gonna put that in all in one shot, okay? And we're gonna take a fork that we have here, and we're just gonna kind of incorporate that in. And it's gonna come together and it's gonna look like a dough, sort of. Not like bread dough, not like a crumble dough, like a pie dough, if you've ever made pies. So that's what it's gonna look like. You're gonna wanna incorporate all of the dry bits. Make sure you get that all incorporated. Okay, and then once you have that all kind of done, you're ready to go. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Okay, and once again, you can do this with regular sugar. You don't have to use, you know, can of sugar, but this just takes it to a whole new level. Now, as you can see, obviously the recipe is going to give you way more than 4. So you can do what I did, which is just put it into some plastic wrap, save it. You can put it in the freezer. It stays really well in the fridge. And then you can just pop it out whenever you need it, let it come to temperature, and then you're ready to go. So I'm just gonna use a little scoop. I'm gonna put that right on top, and then I'm just gonna spread it out a little bit. You want it to have some openness, so that way the heat, and as it's bubbling, it'll kind of be able to kind of do its thing, because you don't want your crust to get too soggy. So I'm just gonna put that on top and then spread it. And then if you want to get like extra with it, you can like sprinkle a little bit of the can of sugar on top, which is what I'm gonna do. Okay. And then I like to take a little bit of the can of sugar and just sprinkle some more on the top. Gives it a nice color, and I don't know, like, I feel like it gives it that nice little crunch that we like. So you have that nice soft fruit on the bottom, and then you have that beautiful golden crust on the top. So we're gonna throw this into an oven for about 20 minutes, 25, depending on your oven, at 350. And that's gonna do its thing. Okay, so I'm gonna put this to the side here, put this to the side here, and we see our salsa's been kind of chilling like a villain. And I'm just gonna give it a nice toss just to make sure that it's still kind of marinating. Okay. And so I'm gonna do the salad, and we're gonna plate that up since the salmon is ready. So you could be doing this while your tarts are in the oven. By the time everybody's finished eating, you got tarts. So I have a beautiful baby spinach and baby kale mix. So I'm just going to, and once again, the reason why I like having a lot of lime in my salsa is because it gives it that extra juiciness that I really, really enjoy. And I really want on my salsa, because then I can then use that sort of as a little bit of a dressing. So what I'm gonna do is take this beautiful plate, okay, and we're gonna take a little bit of that salad. We wanna make sure we get a good mix of the kale and the spinach. People looking all impressed, like, oh, you've been in the kitchen all day, and you're like, nope, it's too hot for that. So I'm gonna take a little bit of this juice that we have. I'm just gonna drizzle that on top a little bit. Okay. I'm gonna bring my salmon over. And once again, it can take up to about 8 minutes or so, 8 to 12 minutes, depending on how you like your salmon. Some people like it to be a little bit on the underside, and that's totally fine. So we have our beautiful salmon there. And look, I'm Puerto Rican, okay? So I don't know how to cook for just like one person. There's like 5 pieces of fish there. And then we're just gonna take our salsa, and we're just gonna put that right there. And depending on, you know, how much you like, you can do more. I'm probably gonna take some more of this juice here. And the really cool thing about my oil is that you can just use it straight like any oil. You know, you can just drizzle it, you know, melt it down, drizzle it right on top of stuff. And so I think I'm gonna just do a little bit of that also on my because in my mind, you can never have enough. So you can put that right on the side so people can decide if they want to incorporate that or not, okay? All right, so there is the beautiful salmon, okay? Now, while my tarts are in the oven, doing what they do, I'm gonna just make a really quick whipped cream for it, because what's cobbler without whipped cream, right? Like, come on. We just had a really, really healthy meal, so we're gonna indulge a little bit with the dessert. So we're just gonna do a really quick whipped cream. You can also infuse your cream also, which is one of the ways that I love to put cannabis into like really unexpected places. And so infusing it would just be just like you would do a butter or an oil, but you would do it kind of in a double boiler so the cream doesn't burn. So I definitely have done that before, and it's amazing and I love it. So I have just some regular old heavy cream here, and I'm gonna whip this, but I'm not gonna whip it really, really hard. I'm actually gonna whip it by hand because I like that soft, kind of billowy like whipped cream. I don't like that really like super hard whipped cream that like they've overdone it. So I need a bowl. Okay, so your cobblers are in the oven, they're going, they're baking, you finished your salmon, you have your salad, people are eating, they're like, oh, you're the bomb. And you're like, hey, here's coming the last course. So we have our whipped cream. I'm gonna whip some cream really softly. So I have a clean pan bowl here. I'm just gonna put about a half a cup or so. And then I have this little bit of can of sugar that's left here. So I'm just gonna throw that in there also, just for, you know, shits and giggles. And then I'm gonna whip this by hand. I want a nice, soft kind of peak, because I like soft peaks versus the really, really hard kind of whip. I'm gonna add a little bit more in there. And also I'm gonna put a touch of vanilla in it. So I'm gonna throw that all in there. We're gonna do this by hand. And it's really not gonna take very long. The key thing is you wanna have a nice clean bowl, and you also wanna make sure that your bowl is cold when you start in it, because it actually helps it to whip much quicker. So I'm just gonna do this by hand. Patience, grasshopper, patience. But that gives you plenty of time to make sure that your cobbler gets finished. And you can already see it's starting to like foam up a little bit. So I'm just gonna keep whipping this. Once again, really, really cold bowl. I had this actually in the freezer for a bit, so it helps it to get really cold. And I'm also using a metal bowl, because that also kind of helps out a little bit with getting it kind of whipped the way that you want it to be whipped. Of course, you can also do this in a mixer or with a hand mixer, or you know, if you have a KitchenAid or whatever, you can also do it in there. Oh, I got my whipped cream all over the place. Ah, making a mess. But you gotta make a mess when you're cooking. So you can see that it's kind of thickened up nicely. I want it to be just a little bit more. This is all one way getting our cardio in, people. Feel the burn. Okay, so we have a nice, beautiful, soft whip, which is really what I want. And I'm just going to, all right, so now that we have these beautiful, soft, so you see it's kind of whippy, it's not liquidy anymore, but it's definitely not a hard kind of whip. And that took me like 0 time, right? So I'm gonna check on my cobblers, okay? These are looking so good. So they're nice, beautiful golden brown on top. Nice and crunchy, because I added that extra like can of sugar on it. So it has a beautiful color on it. And so we're gonna just take these right off of here. And just gonna put a beautiful little dollop of my infused whipped cream, because I did use my sugar for that. I'm just gonna put that right on top. Now, whipped cream is one of those things that saves really well, so you can put this into a container or a Ziploc, throw it in the fridge, throw it in the freezer also. It's really great. You can add it to sauces. I mean, if you didn't put any sugar or anything in it, but you can add it to sauces. You can use it later on in the week or whatever. It holds really well. So, or you could just eat it with a spoon like that. So we have our beautiful triple berry cobbler. It's infused. Depending on if you use the can of sugar, with this recipe that I did, there's about 50 milligrams in this dessert, okay? So we have our 2 dishes. We have our salmon and we have our triple berry infused cobbler. So I think you should come over here and taste this, Chris. I mean, I made all this food. Take your mask off.
I think we get on my earrings. Okay, guys, I'm like really excited to try all this.
She's been talking about it the whole time.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna start with the salmon.
Of course you are. I knew you were gonna go for the salmon first.
Let's take a bite of this and see. I don't want to eat like an aggressive human, but I'm so excited.
It's just so funny.
I'm gonna get a little bit of salsa.
Yeah, it's the bomb.
Are you zooming in my face? This is so good. This is so good. Okay.
And it's so fresh, and I think that that's the thing that I love about it. It's super easy, you know, and yeah. Awesome. Crunch from the topping. Ooh, that's good stuff right there. So we're gonna. Oh. That feels like all around summer right now. It really does. The whipped cream is beautiful and light and fluffy. The crunchiness from the topping, the tartness and the sweetness from the berries. This is the bomb, y'all. Definitely get with this. I'll take another bite. Okay.